Welcome to Her Upper Hand, a series exploring themes and journeys around female gambling harm.
Your brain works.
It's weird, isn't it? I was talking to Deb earlier on. I'm so different. I hated being different as a kid. I hated it.
You'll hear from 6 women, each affected in different but connected ways by gambling.
I started doing performance poetry. That was the one thing that gave me a bigger adrenaline rush than gambling ever did.
Over the course of 6 weeks, they've been learning about podcasting. And this series is the culmination of all that work.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Thank you all for sharing. Thank you very much for sharing.
In each episode, you'll hear one woman harness the power of audio to explore these themes in her own words.
This is Her Upper Hand.
Her Upper Hand. Real talk about women's experiences of gambling.
This is Lindsey.
A quick message for our listeners. In this series, you'll hear from women who have been affected by gambling, either personally or through people they care about. These episodes hold space for joy, resilience and hope. But we'll also talk openly about the emotional impact these experiences can have. Please take care while listening. You're welcome to pause, skip or return whenever it feels right. Hi, I'm Lindsey and welcome to today's episode, Finding My Voice. Today's conversation is a special one. We're sitting together not just as women impacted by gambling harm, but as writers, learners and storytellers. Recently, we took part in a community journalism course where we each created written articles exploring themes that are deeply personal to us: healing, recovery, resilience, building new skills, and finding community. This wasn't just about putting words on a page, it was about shaping experiences that have often felt chaotic or silenced into something structured, thoughtful, and powerful. It was about reclaiming the narrative. And perhaps, in many ways, it was about reclaiming ourselves. In this episode, we'll talk about what it means to write your truth, how creativity can support recovery, and why we've chosen to return for the next course. What happens when lived experience becomes expertise? What shifts when we move from surviving to speaking? This is a space for honesty, reflection, and connection. This is about voice and what it means to find it together. I'm joined today with 2 of the original members and I'd like to introduce you to Jenny and Kat. We responded to a call out from Greater Govanhill Magazine in late summer 2024 inviting expressions of interest to take part in our new community journalism course paired with action research. So I'd like to kick off our conversation by asking what compelled you both to apply to the Greater Govanhill call out for participants that was focusing on women and gambling harms in a community journalism course?
I think the fact that it was a journalistic course and I'm always up for learning. And because haven't got a very good vocabulary, I thought it would be a good way of being able to express myself. And of course it was about gambling, so was up for it.
Oh, thanks, Jenny. What about yourself, Kat?
So I'd seen the call out on the community journalism course in connection with women and gambling harms on Instagram around August 2024. I've been following a lot of the work that Greater Govanhill were doing, and as a disillusioned former mainstream journalist, I love the whole idea of community journalism and activism. But I was actually in a really challenging state of my life at the time because I'd been in recovery from my own gambling addiction for 3 years at that point, but I'd had a big setback that summer, and I was also going through a breakup of a long-term relationship, and what was to follow was a period of homelessness. So in a way it was a big risk for me to start a course where there was a potential of being triggered to gamble again, or at least it some way adversely affecting my recovery, but I knew it was a risk and a leap of faith worth taking. It was a chance to get back on the bike and write about something I'd lived experience of and realised I had a lot to say about. So instead of it being the trigger to gamble again, the course actually galvanised and helped me, my determination to stay in recovery and build a future platform for people such as myself and for other women around gambling harms. And yeah, most of all, I knew I had a lot to say about it.
Some of that really resonates with me, Kat, and thank you for being so honest about it, because that is a really difficult situation on multiple levels for you to be able to take part in that. And I certainly pick up in the bit about using my own voice that Jenny, you were talking about, and building those skills. For me, I wanted to get involved in it because a huge part of what I do in my day-to-day life is about amplifying community voice. And it wasn't anything I'd ever thought to speak about myself, was about the gambling harm as me being an affected other in my childhood. So the thought of the two of them coming together was just too tempting for me to give a go to. So in a different way, it was a risk to me about exposing myself to this Pandora's box that I had closed for nearly 40 years. But like yourself, it was well worth the risk. And I can say this now, 18 months on, that it's one of the best things I've ever done.
Definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
One of the things that I found through doing the journalism course aspect was about finding my own voice. For me, it gave me an opportunity to link the now that I am and who I am with the childhood that I had and the childhood that hopefully a lot of people don't get to experience. And to view it from the lens of an adult now and what should have happened. And that certainly inspired my article that I wrote. And I know that everyone chose a very different topic for what they chose to write about. Some were deeply personal, some were anonymous. For me, I found it incredibly powerful about writing something quite exposing and something very sensitive about something that happened to me as a child, but trying to look at it as a lens through myself, whereas I'm used to taking myself out of anything that I write. I need to be invisible because I'm just the narrator of other people's lives. So that was really challenging for me. But I'd really like to ask both of you, and if I can start with you, Kat, when you sat down to actually write your article for the community journalism course, what surprised you about your own voice? And I'm specifically asking you first because I remember you actually wrote an article first, and then you went back and then did a second article as well.
Yeah, so I'd never actually written anything about my recovery or gambling harm, like from a point A to a point B. At any time before, apart from like a timescale ambition that I'd been asked to write in gambling addiction rehab, so that was very particular. But yeah, you're right, I'd actually written 2 articles. One was called What I Learned as a Female Gambling Addict, which was a personal journey, and another called When the Fun Stops for Female Gamblers, the Ads Keep Coming, focused on gambling advertising and how it was targeting women specifically as a demographic. And I toyed with which one to share and see published, because at the end of the day, the personal story was kind of like you were saying there, it's like putting yourself out there and everything that can happen after that, and you're never quite sure. And it's not always easy doing it, knowing that your life is, it's going to be in black and white for strangers basically to read, and friends and family. But what I realised it was that my story was starting to have something towards a happy ending, and that was a positive message that I wanted to share. And if a gamble-free life was something that I was starting to experience, then other people could read my story and could believe it could happen to them, or for someone they were supporting also. But I didn't go into minute detail about my recovery because I didn't think that was necessary. But I did share where gambling addiction had taken me slightly, but by the same token also where recovery was taking me, and that felt like the overriding reason to choose the personal story over the more kind of stat-filled article. That felt like the right decision, and it still feels like the right decision when I see it in the magazine itself.
There's a collection of stories in that, and a lot of them are deeply personal, and certainly the one I shared was deeply personal too, and I know that I did the right thing. At the time it was very daunting writing it, but I'm pleased I did when I see it in a collection of stories where other people are being so visible. Jenny, what about yourself and your unique story?
Well, mine was in 2 halves. It was highlighting women's gambling compared to men's and the reasons why women gamble. And then the other side was what I did after gambling. So I talked about my travels and my personal life. Yeah, so the first one was really interesting because I had to do lots of research, and that meant that I was educated at the same time while I was educating other people. When I wrote the second one, I didn't want to be defined by my gambling, which I quite often say that. But I also realised that I'd been an affected other as well. I remember my dad being a gambler, and the only time I really did anything with my mum, once I, met up with her, was going to bingo. And I never thought about that until we did this course, until I listened to other people.
The idea of what happens next is coming through in both your stories, that you spoke about a happy ending, Kat, and you could see it already starting to happen when you were pulling your story together. And Jenny, the fact that you picked a second article to write about where you are now and who you are now and not being defined by gambling is incredibly powerful, and hopefully that's going to help some listeners who are listening in as well. When we think about gambling and gambling harm, it can often shrink how we see ourselves. And that's certainly how I felt. I felt that it really contained me as an individual, and it held a lot of myself back and a lot of my personality in ways I didn't even realise until I did the first course. And it's only now that I'm starting to step out into more of a limelight idea. I've moved away from shame and the silence that was imprisoning me through all my life. For me, I felt I became whole.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Jenny, if I can ask you, do you feel that you've developed some strength through taking part in the course?
Definitely. I actually like myself now. And I think, and I'm not so hard on myself. And if I make a mistake, well, I make a mistake. But I can see that other people like me. I always thought that people didn't like me. I was always a bit of a outsider looking in. And it made me confident enough to try lots of different things. And you don't always have to be good at something to do it. We actually did really well on that course, didn't we? Everybody achieved. But it wouldn't have mattered if we didn't, because we got so much more out of it than being able to write something down on paper. We learnt how to express ourselves and realise that, as you say, our voice is just as important as anyone else's.
Yeah, it was around the validation, and I felt coming together in a small community that we established in the newsroom was so important, and for me it was a huge part in the journey of us moving forward.
Yeah.
What about yourself, Kat? Slightly different lens here, because you're going into this as a professional, as we all labelled you.
Fallen professional. Yeah.
No, we just labelled you as a professional. You were the ringer of the group, coming in with all this wealth of experience in writing a story, where the likes of me and Jenny are just scrambling around over, was this the right word? We thought that this for you would be a really natural fit, and it wasn't until we were halfway through the course where I realised actually this is presenting a real challenge for you as well, because you were sitting with the dichotomy of, do you go down the professional route of your first article, which is the facts, and taking it from a very hands-off approach to these are the cold hard facts of the day and this is what people need to know, before making that pivotal decision to actually delve into yourself and free yourself through creative means.
To be honest, I had writer's block for about 2 or 3 years while I was gambling, and a lot of that was to do with not being interested in anything, whether it was writing professionally as a career that I was doing, or it was writing a journal or writing a poem or anything like that. So that was like something that had been parked. But being on the course had actually opened up this whole other part of me wanting to write and getting the desire back to write. And Eve was very much part of that, because when I first met Eve, I could see the passion that she had for journalism, and a lot of that was to do because she was freelance and she wasn't hitched on to any mainstream media sort of thing. One of the reasons I'd fell out of love with journalism was because I'd been working in a mainstream model, and I didn't like an editor telling me what to do and being employed in a certain way. But the course helped me get back on the bike of loving journalism and what journalism is really meant to be when you first start out, and that whole thing about why I get into it in the first place, that was rekindled. So this was all happening as well as me coming along to like the sessions every Monday or every Thursday and going, I can't turn up and knowing that I've gambled through the week because I'm writing about something that's meant to be helping other women. And even if I did, I can still come. It's not like you're shut out at the door. But it was like, I keep repeating that word, galvanised, because that's really what it gave me. It was kind of like just got me back in the bike and made me go, I love journalism again, but I'm doing it in a really safe space of Greater Govanhill Community Newsroom with people that are making a safe space for me, as well as, and hopefully I'm giving something back. So there was so much going on that it's hard to, even like 18 months on in a way, like I'm still unpacking stuff because it was the beginning of a really big journey for me. Yeah, it's been truly cathartic.
Thank you for being so candid. We've all chosen to come back for part 2 of the course 18 months later, and I'm delighted that so many people chose to return, because you feel like, for me, it feels like I'm coming home. And I remember saying that the first night that I came back to the course. You're back in a safe space, you're back with your tribe, you've got your people around you who really understand you, who've really seen underneath the facade that you've maybe had for so long, and you've shared a lot of yourself. And for me, that was the first time ever speaking about any of the things that happened to me when I was growing up. And to get invited back, first off, for the second part was so exciting. And it gave me a real opportunity to move forward with my skills, because obviously you're listening to a podcast, and this was the medium chosen for our next journalism course, was about designing a podcast. So I jumped at the opportunity to get everyone back in a room and to discuss what we learned, but also what's next for us. What drew you back here? What was the learning with the connection? And was it maybe unfinished stories, or was it something else?
It was exploration for me, because I must be honest, I hadn't even listened to a podcast, or not intentionally. And I do like a challenge. And since the course, it's made me realise that I can express myself. But I did look forward to coming back, because when you live on your own, it's quite nice to have something to look forward to, because towards the end of the day I'm usually quite tired. So if I haven't got a definite thing to do, I don't find something to do. But when you've got something to come out to, no matter how tired you are, when you get here, it's, without realising it, we are part of a family.
We're a package deal.
We're a package deal. Sometimes a bit rough on the edges.
What about yourself, Kat?
Ironically, in between doing the journalism course and the podcast course starting, I'd developed my own podcast series, which yourself was a fantastic guest on, an episode called Relationships and How Gambling Harm Affects Them. So in a way, it feels like twice I've been put in the cart after the horse. You know what I mean? If that's the right saying, but you know what I mean by that.
Trailblazer, that's the saying.
It's like, why do a course that you already kind of have the skills for? But I wanted to be back in that family and be challenged to do another podcast episode, but it was just a wee bit different. So I agree, it was like coming back into the bosom of something really special and having a chance to revisit it. And you don't often get chances to kind of do the second part or an iteration again, because funding and opportunity and people doing different things, or things have moved on, whatever reason. So when I saw that there was going to be a second part through a podcast medium, I thought that is going to be a great way to spend our time again together, and who knows, there might be a third thing. Who knows?
Can you share one word on what this experience has meant for you?
I'd say thought-provoking. Oh, that's 2 words.
We'll stick a hyphen in it. I'm going to say empowering.
Yes. I'll say growth.
That is 3 lovely words. And here's to the next 18 months, and hopefully they're filled with more joy, passion and poetry. But thank you so much for taking the time to come in and talk to me.
Thank you, Lindsey.
You may have noticed Kat mentioned Eve a few times in the recording, and I'm sitting here now with Eve, who I can formally introduce as the journalist and facilitator for both courses. And I wanted to ask Eve the same question that I'd asked the others. What drew you back? Was it learning from the first course? Was it the connections? Was it unfinished stories? Or was it something else?
All of those things. You know, I do a lot of kind of training and facilitation in my work, but there was something about the first round of this course that we did 18 months ago that was just so special and kind of different from anything I've ever done before. A lot of the participants have kind of said that they felt it was a really safe space, and that was kind of our main aim, was to create a safe space where people could share and explore these experiences. And I'm so proud that I feel we really did do that with the first course. I went home quite emotional most kind of evenings after facilitating the course, because I just felt so grateful that people had chosen to open up and share in the way that they did. And I watched you all find your voice, as you've identified, and I watched you all form bonds and relationships with each other that have lasted to now and continue on. I did learn so much from all of you as well. You know, I came in kind of knowing a bit about how to maybe report on kind of sensitive issues and that sort of thing, but I hadn't really ever covered gambling, hadn't sort of directly worked in addiction or anything like that. I learned so much about that experience and about kind of different elements of people's different journeys. And that was really kind of meaningful for me as well. And it was just so special. I felt like our work wasn't done. I felt like there was so much more for us to say together. You know, the power of kind of being back in a room that you find safe with people that you've formed that bond with. I think that allows you to say things that you might not have been able to say 18 months ago. I think we've seen that in the kind of stories that people have chosen to tell in their podcast episodes. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for me to come back and do it again and invite you guys back again to see what amazing stories you would produce this time round.
Well, I can say that I was delighted to receive the call to come back, and I know, certainly speaking to the other women, they are also delighted to be here learning some more skills and being able to delve a bit deeper into what their journey looks like 18 months on. And certainly for me, I have continued to grow and share my story now at a national level, which I never thought I would ever be able to do. And the work that has led on from that is so empowering. And I really feel I'm starting to make a difference, which is something that I never thought I would ever be able to say about something so sensitive and so hidden from me for so many years. If you could share one word on this experience, what would that be for you?
Proud.
Thank you so much. Thank you. As we come to the end of this conversation, I keep coming back to something simple but powerful. Finding your voice isn't a single moment, it's a process. For each of us, that process has looked different. It has meant naming harm honestly. It has meant sitting with difficult memories long enough to shape them into something coherent. It has meant recognising resilience where we once only saw struggle. And through this community journalism course, it has meant discovering that our experiences are not just stories of loss. They are stories of insight, growth and strength. Writing our articles asked us to slow down, to reflect, to choose our words carefully. In doing that, we didn't just document recovery, we participated in it. We built new skills, we built confidence, and perhaps most importantly, we built community. Coming back for the next course isn't just about learning more, it's about continuing to grow, continuing to connect, continuing to transform lived experience into something that can inform, support and empower others. If you're listening and navigating your own journey with gambling harm, we hope this conversation reminds you your voice matters, your story has value, and healing does not have to happen in isolation. This episode has been Finding My Voice. Thank you for being part of this space and for listening. This wasn't just about putting words on page. It was about shaping experiences that have often felt chaotic or silenced into something structured, thoughtful and powerful. It was about reclaiming narrative, and perhaps, in many ways, it was about reclaiming ourselves.
This episode was created by Lindsey, And you also heard from Kat, Jenny, and me, Eve Livingston.
Before we go, we wanted to recognise that some of the content from today's episode may have resonated with some of you. If any part of the conversation felt a bit too familiar or brought up some difficult feelings, especially around gambling harm, whether it's affecting you directly or someone you care about, please know that you don't have to face this alone. There are free, confidential services out there to help support you. If you feel that you are in a crisis, please contact the National Gambling Helpline on 0808 8020 133 or the Samaritans on 116 123. Both services operate a 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline. You can also find more information and support through the Bet No More website. That's Bet No, as in KNOW, moreuk.org.
Her Upper Hand was the product of a 6-week course by Greater Govanhill Magazine, facilitated by Eve Livingston and Flora Zajicek. The podcast producer was Flora Zajicek. The project was funded by Gamble Aware and published by The Big Light. To find out more, visit the Greater Govanhill website.